Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, beloved Swamiji, we humbly bow before you all. Swamiji, we come before you tonight with great gratitude for all you have brought to us, for your unconditional love under all circumstances, for showing us a way to allow our souls to thrive, for creating community in which we could find divine friendship, for filling our hearts with song and prayer, and for the promise that you will be with us always. Om, peace, Amen. Let's sit and begin with a brief meditation.
The same moment. As a child, Donald, Swamiji, often went into superconsciousness. At night, while lying in bed, Swamiji wrote later, I would see myself absorbed in a radiant light, and my consciousness would expand beyond the limits of the body. It was so natural, Donald thought everyone went to sleep that way. A serious illness at the age of 9, then the challenge of finding his place in the world would again undermine Donald's easy acceptance of the superconscious state. It didn't relate to the world I was growing up in and had decided I must relate to. I began thinking of that light and expansion as something strange and pushed it away. Swamiji wrote in his autobiography, but I always remembered it. After he became a disciple and learned to meditate, Swamiji said, "In meditation, I entered that same state I had experienced as a child. It was as if all the intervening years had ceased to exist. Then and now was the same moment. That reality is eternal. In superconsciousness, time doesn't exist."
I've roamed the far hills and learned many skills. I've wandered on many a shore. Though often I've thought I'd gained what I sought, a voice always said, "There's more." Go sing with the sun and dance with the moon. Go ride on the highest star. The reaches of space lack one special place. It's there that my heart did soar. Have you seen Sorrento? Roamed her emerald hills, breathed her morning magic, flowers and bounding rills. Beauty's spring is gladness, shaming mortal skills. Have you seen Sorrento? Gazed on Naples Bay, sailed upon the blue sea, heard the wavelets play. Tell her if you go there, I'll return someday. I've roamed the far hills and learned many skills. I've wandered on many a shore. Though often I've thought I'd gained what I sought, a voice always said, "There's more." Go sing with the sun and dance with the moon. Go ride on the highest star. The reaches of space lack one special place. It's there that my heart did soar. Have you seen Sorrento? Roamed her emerald hills, breathed her morning magic, flowers and bounding rills. Beauty's spring is gladness, shaming mortal skills. Have you seen Sorrento? Gazed on Naples Bay, sailed upon the blue sea, heard the wavelets play. Tell her if you go there, I'll return someday. Have you seen Sorrento?
Will I find God? In August 1948, Master experienced a great samadhi, experience of cosmic consciousness, during which Divine Mother spoke both to him and through him. A striking feature of that samadhi were these words she addressed to Master. In the beginning, I sent you a few bad ones to test your love for me. But now I am sending you angels. Whoever smites them, I will smite. Just over a month later, September 12th, 1948, Swamiji arrived. Toward the end of their first meeting, Master said to him, I give you my unconditional love. Have I been a yogi in other lives? Swamiji asked his guru. Many times, Master replied. Your work, Master told him, is lecturing, writing, and editing. Sir, Swamiji inquired, haven't you yourself already written everything that is needed? Master looked a little shocked. Don't say that, he exclaimed. Much more is needed. When Master lamented the number of ministers who had fallen because of ego, Swamiji said, Sir, that's why I don't want to be a minister. Master replied with deep seriousness, You will never fall due to ego. To a young monk at Mount Washington, Master said, You must mix more with Walter. You don't know what you have in him. Master once said to Swamiji with deep earnestness, apart from St. Lin, his spiritual successor, also known as Rajasi Janakananda, every man has disappointed me, and you mustn't disappoint me. Master had good men disciples. Swamiji understood him, therefore, to be referring to the role Master wanted him to play in spreading his teachings, and not specifically to his life as a devotee. Your life is one of intense activity and meditation, Master told Swamiji. Though I tried always to make meditation my primary focus, Swamiji said years later, I couldn't help noticing that Master placed activity first in this sequence. Swamiji once asked Master, Will I find God in this life? Yes, Master replied, but don't think about it. After a pause, Master continued, After many lifetimes, everything has balanced out now. Near the end of his life, Master said to Swamiji, You have pleased me very much. I want you to know that.
Come here while I sing you of emerald hills, of valleys and meadows so fair, that all who have seen them have carried away memories in their hearts, friends, like the lilacs of May. Oh, my song is the story of the lilacs of May. My song is the story of deer on the hills, of larks that soar seeking the sun, of nightingales lifting the curtain of night, as with music they bring down heaven's blessing of light. Oh, my song is the story of God's blessing of light. Come join me in singing of that emerald isle, of flowers that like jewels besprinkle the lea, of waterfalls eager to embrace the white sea, as we with our Maker united would be, as we with our Maker reunited would be. Come here while I sing you of emerald hills, of valleys and meadows so fair, that all who have seen them have carried away memories in their hearts, friends, like the lilacs of May. Oh, my song is the story of the lilacs of May.
He saw you. Several hundred people came to Ananda Village that weekend to celebrate Swamiji's 77th birthday. Many had been with Swamiji for decades. There was a concert, a festive dinner, Sunday service, and several smaller gatherings hosted by Swamiji at his home. The culminating event was a garden party at Crystal Hermitage. Once again, we sang Happy Birthday, while Swamiji blew out the candles on yet another exquisitely decorated cake. When the refreshments had been served and the entertainment was over, Durga stood at the microphone, speaking for all of us. In a voice choked with emotion, she expressed gratitude to Swamiji for all he has done to bring Master to us and to help us realize God. The applause went on for several minutes. When it finally died down, he responded. If I thought you were celebrating me, Swamiji said, I would be quite embarrassed. It is not me, however, that we are celebrating. It is all of us and all that we have done together. Master told me many times that I had a great work to do. After he died, Rajarsi Janakananda, his spiritual successor, repeated the same words to me, you have a great work to do. Then Rajarsi assured me, and Master will give you the strength to do it. Rajarsi was speaking about all of you. You are the strength Master has given me. Master saw you. He knew you would come, and that through you, this great work would be done.
Lord Most High, our Heavenly Father, all our lives we dedicate to Thee. All our labors, all our joys and woes, all our pleasure, all our melodies. Make us each a channel of thy peace. When in darkness, guide us from above. Where there's sorrow, may we sow thy joy. Where there's hatred, may we share thy love.
Love Song, told by David Eby. If you want to know me, Swamiji has said, listen to my music. That's how I first met Swamiji, alone in my car, singing one of his songs. I lived in Portland, Oregon, and had just started going to the Ananda Center there. The choir director asked me to sing a solo for an upcoming performance of the oratorio. I'm embarrassed to admit that my attitude towards Swamiji's music then was a little condescending. How charming, I thought, that the founder is also a composer. I liked his music, but I have been studying music since I was 6 years old, and compared to what I was used to, his music seemed too simple to take seriously. I was a member of the Portland Symphony Orchestra. Sometimes the life of a professional musician is not all that rosy. On this particular day, I had spent hours in a cramped orchestra pit playing music I didn't like under a mediocre conductor, surrounded by musicians as unhappy as I. Driving home that night, my spirits were about as low as they have ever been. The Ananda concert was coming soon, and I thought I might as well practice my solo. The song was, "This Is My Son." I'd never heard it, but I could tell from the score it was easy to learn. I am a cellist, but singing has always been a happy sideline for me. Keeping one eye on the road, I glanced over the music and then ran through the song a couple of times. I was about to sing it for a third time when I realized I had better pull off the road. Not only had the song banished my sour mood, my consciousness was now so expanded it wasn't safe for me to drive. I was astonished. How could such a simple song change my consciousness completely? It was the beginning of a new musical career for me, a career devoted almost entirely to Swamiji's music. Not long after, I had a chance to play cello for an oratorio performance in which Swamiji sang. Afterwards, there was a standing ovation, and Swamiji was called to the front to accept a huge bouquet of flowers. I have seen many great musicians accept accolades from an appreciative audience, but I have never seen anyone respond as he did. It was more than humility. It was a complete absence of ego. "This is not my music," Swamiji often says. "It is God's music. It is given to me. I hear it, and then I write it down." Listening to Swamiji sing was a musical experience like none I'd ever had before. Yes, he has a beautiful voice, but the beauty is more than the sound. When he sings, there is an actual transfer of consciousness. Seeing him before the audience now, I realized that what Swamiji transmitted was pure love.
This is my Son, in whom I am well pleased. Naught of himself remains, naught but the true light. Heed well his words, the way he shows is my way. All who would find the truth walk where He leads.
Pandava wrote this program. At the time, we both thought it was a very good idea for me to speak in the middle. Hold on. Do you know this picture of Swamiji? Have you ever seen so much fun and joy and laughter? That's what I need. You know, just yesterday I started reading through Asha's book again, that all these stories are from, and Narayani's book, and I was listening to talks and watching over the years the various Moksha celebrations. Swamiji passed 5 years ago today. So every year, of course, every Ananda community is doing what we're doing. There's a lot of stories, a lot of really like these, and just thousands of spectacular stories. And I realized as these 2 days have gone by that something so unusual was happening in me that I don't know, I'm not sure I can put it into words. I hope some of it gets conveyed just through heart tonight. But one piece of that is such a profound sense of humility. I just couldn't believe that we would be together and we would be sharing these stories, and I would be up here trying to put words around this man and his consciousness, and it wasn't scary. It was just the most beautiful sense of humility, that it would just have to be, you would have to know my heart and we'll share there, because there are no words. I mean, these stories, a lot of the stories we just heard were not, the last story was David Eby's, of course, but otherwise just stories about Swamiji, and many of them in his own words. His greatness is so big. When you hear these stories, you realize he's omnipresent. His consciousness was truly omnipresent. He wasn't thinking about how to respond to people. I'm going to share some of these stories with you. He wasn't doing what so many of us do. And we do what we do well. We care about each other. We watch someone who's in trouble and we open our hearts and we pray about what's best for them. And we bring everything we have to trying to support each other and everyone, everywhere in those ways. And by God's grace, a lot of the time we succeed, but it's a learning curve, and it's an effort, and it's a conscious opening of the heart. It's not hard, but we're learning, and we're trying. And that's pretty darn good. That's a lot more than what a lot of the world is doing. But with Swamiji, well, just like he said, he was a little boy, he expanded into infinity. Then he thought, this is too weird for the world. And he brought himself back into his body and into his mind, and he began a pursuit to look for God, which, of course, he was already experiencing. So it's I've just been steeped in it for 2 days, and it's hard to just not want to just lay down and do pranams at the altar and let his music and his words just speak for themselves. I mean, it conveys so much more than words can. I met Swamiji in about 1981, maybe. I don't really remember, but let me just say, before I move into any stories, every single one of these stories, my stories, I'll share 2 of them with you. All of the stories that I'll tell that belong to other people, every story in all of the books and all of the talks, they're all of our stories. Because of his consciousness, that pure consciousness of love, pure, expanded into infinity, whatever was happening with anybody else in Swamiji, the story is ours too. If there's anything there for us to get for them, they're at the same moment, heart to heart, soul to soul, and completely non-personal. So we have to read every one of them just like that. So my husband and I were both physicians, and he was a physician. I'm sorry, I wasn't yet. He had inherited some money, and so we used to donate to Ananda. We did not have a lot of money. We weren't giving a lot of money, but we were rich by Ananda standards. So whenever they would do a fundraising that meant those people who gave the most money could go up and have dinner with Swamiji, we won. And we would wind up at dinner with Swamiji up Crystal Hermitage, which was the dome then. And one of the very first dinners we were there, we were seated around a table. There were 15 or 18 people. Some of you have heard me say this. And all of a sudden, we didn't know anybody necessarily because these were other donors. So many of the people were strangers. And I was very nervous around Swamiji. But he stopped and he just stared at Barry and I. And he said, Sally and Barry are good people, but they've got a lot of ego. When they get rid of their ego, they'll do some good, he said. Just like that. I mean, everybody just stopped. Spoons midair. It's like, and of course, all eyes were on us. And I just broke the tension by starting to eat again. Now, what was so amazing, so he was already saying we were sort of pure ego. And we were. We were like egos on speed when I think of it now. So you would think that ego would have taken offense. But I took no offense to that. I wasn't embarrassed. I knew he was right. And we just moved on. And it wasn't until last week when I was participating in this Stories About Swamiji class, which just touched me so deeply. After I spoke, Lahari got up and she repeated my story, and she said, the reason that Shanti could hear that story and not take offense is because there was no judgment in Swamiji's words. He wasn't judging me, it just felt like, oh yeah, that's the truth, and we just could move on in truth. It wasn't that I was beyond, he was pointing out to everybody who would listen who I was at the time, but with no judgment, with nothing but caring. And it never dawned on me that I wouldn't move on from there because he said it. It was so beautiful and just so beautifully delivered. That's that's who he was. I didn't have a lot of personal contact with Swamiji over the years, some, and I won't tell all the stories, all of them lovingly created so that I could just be near him. But what started happening towards the end of his life, maybe the last, I don't know, maybe it was 8 years at least, now that I think about it, is that very often whenever there were big dinners, like book lunches, and there would be hundreds of people at dinner, most of the time, Swamiji would ask that I be at his table. I could never figure out why. Sometimes they were tables of 12. One time I remember we were down at Bharavi's, and it was Swamiji, John Parsons, Dharmaraj, and me. That was the table. I said to the person at the front door, "Oh no, there must be another Shanti here." And Dharmaraj was there. He said, "No, he asked that you sit at his table." One time we were going out for Indian food. He said, "Where's Shanti?" I said, "Here I am, Swamiji." He said, "I want you sitting right across from me. I want to look at you." That sort of took away my appetite. I never understood. I kept all these years, I've been saying to myself, what was he trying to say to me? Why was I there? And then a few months ago, it just started coming to me. He was simply giving me energy. I'm sure of it. As soon as it came, I knew it to be the truth. He was giving me energy. He saw what was going to happen for me karmically, what was going to be asked of me, what kind of a channel I would be invited to become. And he knew I needed his energy to do it. And it was just simply the truth. There were never any words. We made some small talk, but he always looked at me a lot, and he always had me right there. And often, whoever was sitting next to him, he'd say, "No, could you move and just let Shanti be here?" It just came to me. What a gift. What an extraordinary gift. In a way, it was just through me to everybody that I would be given the opportunity to serve. Swamiji said very early on, before he met Master, I have two desires in this life. One is to find God, and one is to help other people find God. And that is exactly what he did. He met Master, he served him for 65 years. And for those of us who listen to him, probably everybody in this room, you hardly listen for 2 sentences that you don't hear Swamiji mention Master. Maybe a few minutes sometimes. It's always all about Master. Always. He was, people have said that when we look back on this time, that we will see Yogananda as the guru of the time. We already know that. We already talk about it all the time. He came during Dwapara, no mistake. We tell those stories. But Jaya said, not that long ago, we will also see Swami Kriyananda as the disciple of this time. And I believe that's the truth. I was rewatching the program that they put together in Pune. I don't know how many years ago it was. It was a tribute to Swamiji for his Moksha. And it's a beautiful 30-minute video on YouTube. I'll bet most of you have seen it, but it's definitely worth watching again. And there's a monk there who keeps they keep coming back to the same group of 8 people, obviously with different questions, but it's beautifully done. And this monk told a story. He said one day he was alone with Swamiji, and Swamiji said to him, "Do you have any questions for me?" And the monk, I wish I knew his name, very dear soul, he said, "No." And Swamiji said, "Are you sure?" And he said, no, I don't. Well, he thought, and he said to Swamiji, you know, I was in school. I was doing everything that was expected of me. And he said, but I wasn't happy. And then I found this path, and now I'm here. And Swamiji interrupted him, and he said, you did the right thing. And then the monk said, he looked at me with such intensity, and he said, the highest dharma for any man is to find God. You did the right thing. And this monk said, I never even had to tell him what my question was. He just knew. We hear that over and over in these stories. I don't know if Helen's here tonight, but she read this story a couple of years ago, and it's in this book with her name. But one New Year's Day at the community, when she was walking over to Crystal Hermitage, where Swamiji was having an open house for the community, she was just praying and praying and praying to Master. She said, you know, I'm just lonely. I'm not looking for a partner. I just feel lonely. If I could just have somebody to hold my hand sometime. That was her prayer. She walks into Crystal Hermitage. We've all been there. Swamiji's waiting at the door to welcome all of these guests, the whole community. He takes Helen by the hand, and he just doesn't say a word to her, just stands there holding her hand while he just continued to greet everybody. And when the last guest had arrived, he just looked at her, didn't say anything, but with a smile that said to her, you're never alone, and walked into the party. It's that kind of thing. That's what happened with the monk. Without a word, his just knowing what each person needs. Shurjo told such a beautiful story at the dedication of the Moksha Mandir. He said one day Swamiji called him in and said to him, they were talking, how many Kriyas do you do, Shurjo? And Shurjo said, 60, thinking he was going to get scolded. And Swamiji just looked at him with such love and compassion and said to him, I'm so sorry that I'm not in more of a position to be a better role model for you. He said, my body just won't let me do as many Kriyas now. Shurjo said, he could have easily said, do more Kriya. He could have said, that's not enough. It would have been the right answer. But instead, he takes such responsibility for each of our souls. Instead, he said, I'm so sorry, I can't be there for you, which is perfectly being there for him. It was the most perfect offering to Shurjo, so much more than do more Kriya. Narayani, in her book, talks about one night she wrote him an email. They were a room apart, but often emailing. And he told her the next day, your English is getting better and better, but your written English is terrible. He said, here's what you're going to do. Write me an email every night. I'll correct it and I'll send it back to you. Doesn't matter what you write. He said, just say hello, tell me what you did during the day. And she started doing that. And for many, many months, he corrected her emails. He literally took her by the hand and taught her, knowing, of course, that she would need to know how to do that. And when she tells that story, she says, here he was, writing books, composing songs, caring for so many people, lecturing, all that he had to do. She said, but one little thing was no less important than writing the Bhagavad Gita, which is what was happening at the time. She, of course, was being very humble about it. It was no small thing that he taught her to write in English, and he knew that. But still, the point, the way she received it so she could share it with us, to be able to say, Swamiji moved in love. He moved in truth. Nothing was big or small in his eyes. No need that anybody had. This book is absolutely filled with story after story. People like Helen would just have a need. They'd have a question that they never verbalized, and Swamiji would turn around and answer it. They'd come with a medical problem, and that beautiful story of when Anandi said, Bharat can't talk, he has a cough. And Swami turned around and said, Bharat does not have a cough. And this cough that had been plaguing him for at least a year, maybe more, he never coughed again. There's a woman who tells a story of having a really ugly wart on her hand for years. She tried every remedy, and I am here to testify, they are very hard to get rid of. She said one day she was walking with Swamiji. He put her hand on, his hand on her back, and she said she was very conscious of this wart, so she was hiding it. The next day she noticed the wart was gone, and it never returned. Story after story. You know, I didn't know that we were going to read the story that was read about what Rajasi said to Swamiji. But this is where it really comes home for all of us. This is what is there's so much that's so important about his life, but this is what we all need to hear. Rajasi said to Swamiji, Master said, because Swamiji went to Rajasi to say, I don't want to do this. Swamiji told us he was whining. He wanted to meditate. He wanted to be quiet. He wanted to be much more into himself. He didn't want to have his desire at the time, not for such a public life. But Rajasi said to him, no, Master said, you have a great work to do, and Master will give you the strength to do it. And that strength is us. And Swamiji said it in his own words, that we were to become the instruments and the channels to keep this work going. We can't just read these stories and just keep crying like I was doing and sit there. That's not going to be my life either. I'm not allowed to sit and weep over the beauty of it all. I'd love to. I'd love to be home more, meditating longer, sitting still, being quiet. No, not my karma. I'm Master's disciple. I'm Swamiji's disciple. Really, his student and his disciple. We have now become the instruments and the channels. He's told it to so many people. He said to Kirtani once, when she was first in Italy and everybody from Europe was coming, and she said to him, Swamiji, I don't even know how to cook for these people. There's Germans, there's Italians, there's Americans. They don't even eat the same food. And Swamiji said to her, your job is to feed their souls. If you feed their souls, everything else will fall into place. Everything. They won't care if they're eating pasta every day. They won't miss burgers and dogs or whatever the Germans eat. Feed their souls and they will feel full. They will know what you are giving them. And then he said, and this is how you feed souls. This is how you will put yourself in a position to be a true and pure instrument and channel for these works. He was speaking to Kirtani, so Kirtani could just tell these stories over and over. He said, you must come together, all of you. You must meditate together, you must serve together, and you must have fun together. And that stuck with Kirtani. She said it many times in many talks. We all need to hear it. We have to meditate together, serve together, have fun together. It is our job to say yes when there's something to do, to become great sevakis, all of us, because in serving, we are readying ourselves to be greater channels, to share the love, the wisdom, the humility, the compassion, the friendship, everything that Swamiji brought to us, everything. There was a problem in India at one point. There was a man who was making a lot of mistakes. And Swamiji said to Jaya, what do you think about what's going on? And Jaya said to him, well, sir, he's making mistakes. That's true. He said, but I am most surprised and in pain about the criticism of those mistakes. And he said, Swamiji just got so thoughtful. And he said to Jaya, he said, who else would we go to, even when we're making mistakes, but a friend? And if we can't be friends, if we can't be there for each other, when we're not doing our best, who can we go to? And I thought when I read that story, Swamiji was a friend to everybody, all the time. And now, he's as here, as present with us as he ever was. He too could have said the words, to those who think me near, I am near. I feel him. I bet many of you do. I was there after he died. We had a women's group up at the village not long after he died. So many people in that room shared stories of how Swamiji came to them the very moment he passed. Magnificent stories. And one of those women looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, everybody will think this is a dream. And I said, nobody in this room thinks it was a dream. We know Swamiji came to you. Swamiji didn't go anywhere. He's free now. He's working through us. He's working with us, and he's working through us. And he is saying to us in every way he can, now it's yours. Now you do it. You watch what I did. You read this book. You too can feel people, can give to them, can know them, can love them unconditionally. And in that unconditional love, people grow. People believe in themselves. They find their infinite soul when they're seen and loved. That's what Lahari said about my story. He was saying something pretty embarrassing about me, but with no judgment. And I just was able to keep going. I didn't have to hide. I could show up at Ananda. I could be blessed by these teachings, by the music, by the readings, by all of you. And I haven't quite made it yet, but I promise you there's a lot less ego here than there was 40 years ago. With God's grace, with Swamiji's grace. Now, we have to share that grace. We have to share it with each other and with the whole world. Now we'll have the second part of our program, which is stories from Swami Kriyananda as we have known him. And I'm sorry, my heart remembers Swami Kriyananda, and it does.
One afternoon, I was sitting in Swami's house,
reading the pages he had written that day of the Bhagavad Gita commentary. When Swami greeted me from upstairs, I felt a particular quality of tenderness in his voice. When I saw him, he seemed to carry a subtle feminine energy, different from anything I'd ever seen before. Joyously, he asked, in a phrase he often used. And how are we today? Very well, and you, Swamiji? He opened his arms wide, gazed upward, and with childlike glee said, Divine Mother is flowing through me. On another occasion, while busy in my reading, I suddenly became aware of a presence next to me. I looked over, and to my surprise, I saw Swamiji sitting there in silence. When did he come in? How long had he been sitting there? I couldn't say. There was a halo of stillness surrounding him. I sat motionless, fearing that even the slightest movement on my part might disturb this feeling. Then he asked me, Do you like it? Meaning the page I was reading. The question, though spoken aloud, didn't create a ripple in the ocean of stillness around us. I love it, Swamiji. Now that the silence was broken, I added, Swamiji, you feel different from the last time I saw you. I am different, he said. I have just finished writing one of the most profound chapters of the Gita commentary. During the time Swami was working on the Gita, I was amazed to see how, from day to day, he would manifest different aspects of the divine. Sometimes he was stillness itself. Other times, the unconditional love of Divine Mother. On a different day, it would be the ever-new bliss of God.
Caught up in ecstasy. 'Twas a day sanctified by God. There he showed me the truths of heaven, truths which all seeking him should know. How the soul made to live in freedom can reclaim its eternal right. How the night, born of our delusions, can be fired, blazing with his light.
When we left India for Assisi in March 2013, none of us had the slightest inkling how close we were to the end. Swami had had many close calls with death, But each time he was called back by his guru to serve him a little longer. Now, however, Swami's energy was unusually different. It felt like he was withdrawing from the world with a level of detachment uncharacteristic of him. There was around him an air of fulfillment, a sense of completion. It was as if there was no need for him to engage with the world, no compulsion to create anything new, no reason to direct his energy outward, no service left undone. It was the inner world now that held his attention. In April, Swami spent most of his time in silence. In the past, he would invite people over nearly every day. Now, he hardly saw anyone except Shurjo and me. His withdrawal was so complete, he scarcely ate. Physically, he was weak and increasingly fragile. Referring to his body, he said, "I feel like I'm disappearing." Though outwardly silent, he was, I sensed, inwardly conversing with Master, surrendering himself to his will. I never felt Swami closer to his guru than during that month. A few days before Easter, Swami asked me to play a recording of his oratorio, Christ Lives. When the music began, he closed his eyes and withdrew into the Christ consciousness. Looking at his beatific smile, I knew he was in bliss. I closed my eyes and sat in meditation next to him, hoping to feel some of what he was feeling. When the song, The Temptation of Christ, began, I heard Swamiji whisper, "This is my favorite song." When it finished, he asked me to play it again, then again, and again. He listened to it at least 5 times, with tears rolling down his cheeks. "I feel just like Jesus," he said. No matter how many times he was tempted by Satan, he always chose God.
Behold all the wonders God's grace can bestow, if you but reclaim what you've given. Why not ask of God any wonder you crave? Worship me to satisfy all human needs. Dominion now over all this noble earth. All I ask of you is worship me. Get thee behind me, Jesus declared. Satan, know you not our Father offers love in your stead. His gift of love to all is my only food. He is all I own. What does man need but him?
Then the darkness lifted, love destroyed Satan's power. Then at last the Savior could begin bringing all to God. For he taught them in freedom, wanting not in return. All he offered was perfect peace, perfect freedom
is all there is. Wise is he who says, I am wholly his. God is all I fear. Lo, my throne of power, shaken by his love, was destroyed in that hour.
Throughout all the world, a new spirit was born. Jesus brought to men's hearts hope for those steeped in sin.
God is all I learned. He is all there is.
Jesus brought to men's hearts hope for those deep in sin.
God is all I've learned. He is all there is. Wise is he who says, I am wholly his.
A few days later, Swamiji wrote the following email, which he sent to Ananda devotees around the world. Dear ones, I wish I could bless each and every one of you with a happy Easter. Easter is a time symbolizing the eventual resurrection of our little individual selves into the one infinite self. I suggest that at this time particularly, you study and meditate on the photograph of Master titled The Last Smile, and consider this amazing fact. He knew that in just a few moments, he would be leaving his physical body forever. There is no thought of self in his eyes, of personal regret, of sorrow. Clearly visible in his eyes and in his facial expression is his unconditional love for all mankind. His readiness to return again and again, as he put it, as long as one stray brother sits weeping by the wayside. Such love for ego-centered humanity is not even conceivable. And this was the love Jesus too felt for all humanity. People weep for him in his suffering on the cross. His suffering was only for humanity that blindly rejects God's love and substitutes for it vengefulness and hatred. I have been going through a personal Armageddon. Nothing in this world attracts me anymore. Nothing at all holds any pleasant memories. None of those experiences, whether interpersonal or outward in any way, holds the slightest attraction for me. Must I really live another 5 years as has been predicted for me? I confess, the very idea appalls me. I have done so much in my life to please God. The very hallmark of my nature has been enthusiasm, even though I've always been aware that I could never really accomplish anything significant in this world. Suddenly now, I feel bereft of that enthusiasm. Maybe it's because my heart feels very tired, but I want only to merge in God. The only lingering thought is that I would like to bring all of you with me. No, I am far from tired of you. I want only your freedom in God. But no, your worldly attachments, identities, and desires, I have to confess, mean simply nothing to me, as my own mean nothing to me. No, this doesn't mean I love you less. I love you much more, for I love that part of you which is eternally real. Whether I succeed or fail in my projects is to me meaningless. All the things I once considered pleasurable are to me now displeasing. I want nothing that this world has to offer. People tell me I am famous. That phrase to me is also meaningless. People often marvel that I've been able to accomplish in this lifetime. To me, it all seems only dust. If we must resurrect our souls, let it be from the delusion that anything in this cosmic dream holds some worthwhile reality for us. We are children of God. That is our sole reality. Love, Swami.
One of the movie scripts Swami worked on in Los Angeles was the story of Ananda. The last week of his life, Shivani, the executive producer, brought Swami the finished movie, Finding Happiness. He invited a small group of friends to watch it with him at his house. Finding Happiness is a creative blend of fact and fiction. The fiction is a journalist from New York who comes to California to find out about Ananda Village. The fact is the community itself, the people, and their stories. The journalist was an actress, but everyone else, including Swamiji, played him or herself. People who have had near-death experiences often talk about a life review. Your whole life passes before you, and you see the successes and failures, and all the lessons still to be learned. Watching that movie with Swami was like watching his life review. It captured in 90 minutes the fruit of Swami's 60 years of discipleship. When Finding Happiness ended, there were tears in every eye. No one could speak. Many of those present had walked with Swamiji every step of the way and knew all the sacrifices he had made to manifest Ananda. Finally, wiping tears from his eyes, Swamiji broke the silence. I see my Guru's dream fulfilled. I have accomplished all that I came to do. Master is very pleased. That night, Swami's heart was overflowing with joy. Whatever lingering doubt he might have had about pleasing his Guru, Finding Happiness took it away. He had emptied himself out completely in service to Master. I'm so eager now to go to the astral world, he told me, then paused for a few seconds. Better still, to achieve final liberation, Moksha. His words did not feel like a wish. They were prophecy.
Though green summer fade and winter draw near, my Lord, in your presence I live without fear. Through tempest, through snows, through turbulent tide, the touch of your hand is my strength and my guide. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. The dancers will pass, the singing must end. I welcome the darkness with you for my friend.
This is an excerpt from a letter that Swamiji wrote in 2011. That I have always been a good and loyal disciple of Master, I will not claim, for it is up to him to make that assessment. This much I can claim, however, and I do so sincerely. I have done my humble best to serve him in this lifetime and to the very best of my capacity. I do not consider that anything I have done is important, except as it has served to promote his message and his mission in the world. When I come before him after this life passes, the only question I expect him to ask me is, have you loved me? And I earnestly hope to be able to say to him with all my heart, you are all I have ever loved.
From the depths of slumber, as I ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness, I will whisper, God, God, God. Thou art the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from thee, I will taste thee and mentally say, God, God, God. No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. When boisterous storms of trials shriek, and when worries howl at me, I'll drown their noises loudly chanting, God, God, God. When my mind weaves dreams with threads of memories. On that magic cloth will I emboss God, God, God. Every night in time of deepest sleep, when peace dreams and calls joy, joy, my joy comes singing evermore. God, God, God. When waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any. God, God, God. Please join me. God, 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 God.
Now you can all have an opportunity to come to the altar if you wish. There are rose petals on either side of the altar. Come up and offer the petals and whatever else you care to offer to Swamiji and our masters. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru Deva, Paramhansa Yogananda, beloved Swamiji, our dear friend and guide, we bow humbly before all of you. Swamiji, you have shown us the true purpose of this life. You have lovingly guided us along the way. You have shined your light on our path. May we come to know God together and to be one in that light someday. Om peace. Amen.